Hello everyone, this is Victor Dantas here from the Zero to Hero Academy. Over the years, we have helped multiple professionals either get into the Power Platform market or some of the seasoned professionals within the industry up their game within the low-code technologies. And we are here to announce that we have a special program coming up between March 19th and May 30th. This is the Power Pages and AI Zero to Hero Mentorship Program. Join us, click on the link, access the lessons. You know how we do it. Live lessons on Teams, and then the recorder goes up to YouTube and you can follow if you are in different time zones, but we prefer it to join it live. Connect, ask questions. So go ahead, invite your colleagues, your dad, your mom, your grandpa. Let's everybody join the fun. All right, we'll see you there. Take care.
This one here, this will be a little bit different than Tuesday. So on Tuesday, I really focused on JavaScript for this as what really I think you should know about. All you need to know about Multistep. Realize that in 1 hour, realistically speaking, I can't tell everything you need to know about Multistep Forms because there's so much. But I'm gonna give my best, and I selected a few topics here that I struggled with when I was learning about Power Pages a few years ago. So maybe you are having the same struggles. So I'm gonna share a few tips and tricks here and see if I can help you with your implementation. Okay, so the things I want to cover is I'm going to start showing how I lay out my Dataverse components. Just briefly there, I'm assuming everybody here is familiar with designing the forms and all of that, but I'm just going to give a few examples there on how I do that. Then I'm going to talk about Power Pages forms, and as I talk through the Power Pages forms, more specifically the Multistep form, I'll talk about a few challenges, right? And I selected here about 3 challenges that I struggled again a few years ago. So hopefully this will give clarity to some people. First item that I picked is when we have the page validation use to apply validation on a form, either that is a step form or a multi-step form or a basic form. It's the same principle, and sometimes that object is undefined. So I'm going to show you why and how to fix that. I'm going to talk about conditional branches. So just a few tricks there as well. And sometimes people, it is not very user friendly the way to apply that. So I'm going to show the way I do. And finally, I'm going to talk about session issues. So I think it's very common that there's a famous flag there about start session on load. And some people get confused with that, and then it's very difficult to get the behavior right. So I'm going to talk about a few scenarios here, and hopefully that will help you as well. All right, so let me jump here to my environment. And first thing I wanted to show is the Dataverse side of things. So I'm going to my solution here, and note that everything I'm going to show you here in terms of this components, the Dataverse element, We could as well do from the Portal Design Studio, but I personally, probably maybe I'm a bit old school, but I personally prefer to go separate, in my solution, isolated, and make these customizations here. So what I have here is a very simple application form where the users will upload product details. That's just a fictitious scenario. It's not exactly a customer requirement or anything. So two things I wanted to show here. So one of them is the views. And this view here that I was showing here on Power Pages, my application's fairly simple. I do have it as a separate view to my other Dataverse views or model-driven app views. Okay, I'm giving it a prefix OR for my initials, and I'm calling my application's portal view. And the reason I do this is really to separate whatever is a portal component versus what is a model-driven app component. And there are a few benefits here. So tomorrow, if we're doing maintenance, or let's say the customer is requesting an additional field, but to a view, to a list. However, that additional field should only appear in the portal, or the opposite. It should only appear in the backend model-driven apps. So if you have the same component shared between the two, you're going to have to split that anyway, right? And the other reason here is from if someone is doing maintenance here to a view, and they look at this view, they're going to know straight away that this view is for the portal. So if they want to make a change to a portal view, they're going to make change here. If they want to make a change to a backend view, they're going to use something else, a different view. So that's just a quick tip here, and it's a practice that we use in all our projects. The same for the forms. So you see that I have the information, which I use that for the backend, and then I have an OR application portal form that this form will be used in the portal. You don't have to do the same. It's just something that I do, and I think it helps me a lot in my project implementations. Okay, so I open my form, and again here I was just gonna quickly show how I lay out my form. So especially when I'm talking about multi-step forms, I like to keep one tab representing each step of my form. So I have a terms and conditions tab. I have conditional here with a text field, just so I show you guys the conditional step. Then I have a subgrid. Let me get rid of this here. A subgrid for product details, have application documents and summary. And then in the summary tab, I actually show all the fields. So basically, I have a section representing each tab or each step. However, the summary itself is a step. So the summary would show everything basically. And the top one here is it's a quick view form for the contact details. So basically, once I'm designing my multi-step form in the portal, I want one of the steps to be the contact record. So and that's actually something that people always ask in the forums. So can I, in the same multi-step form, can I flip between tables? You can. So that's absolutely no problem. And I'm going to show here how you can do that. All right, so this is my my form, and let me jump here to Power Pages, and I'm gonna click on Edit. And John, I'm not sure if you have a question. I think you were raising your hand there.
Yeah, I was just surprised to hear that you could change entities. I was trying to react.
Yeah, so that's quite a common requirement. So I'm gonna show here, and hopefully that will help you there. All right, so I'm moving here to my to my studio design, and I'm going to create a new page. I'm going to call this. I like to give my initial, so I'm going to call application form studio page. I'm just separating here between studio because I already have another one, so just don't want to mix them up. So I'm going to create here a new multi-form step. again, I have one, but I'll create one here new just as example, and I'm gonna call or Multistep Form Studio. I can create my step from here, and within my step, I can, I'm gonna call it step 1 just for simplicity. And in my table, I'm gonna select my application, and I can select a form. And now here is where the Multistep Form functionality in the Design Studio, it starts being a bit limited, right? So here we don't have the option to select one step per tab, pointing to a tab. It points to the entire form, and you can see that it's showing pretty much all my tabs here, which is not what I want. And even if I preview, there's even a second issue that it will show me here. Because I have multiple times the same field, it only shows once. And it's completely not the form that I want. So this is a limitation within the studio design. There are a few other limitations. We cannot add metadata. We cannot add conditions and a few other things. So most of my demo here will happen actually in the Power Pages management, which is the model-driven app behind Power Pages that we use to configure Power Pages as well. They are literally changing the same data behind the scenes, so it's the same thing. However, there's more options within this interface here, the Power Pages management. It's less user-friendly. However, there are more options. And then just to show one example here, I have a separate form here that I already designed previously, and where I have all the steps. And you can see here now there are, once I already have the steps defined, there are a few nice options, that I can do. So I can quickly flip, move step forward or backward, which if you are doing that manually, it is actually quite a lot of work, and you can easily forget something. So perhaps one idea here is design everything from the model-driven app, and then if you need to maintain, you can use either one or the other, whichever you're more comfortable. But there definitely there are limitations here in the studio for now. Hopefully, in a year's time or even less, there will be more capabilities here. So, all right, I'm going to close this here for now, and I'm going to work here in the backend. Okay, so in my Multistep form, and I'm going to open the Studio one, which is the one that I just created. I'm going to select authentication required. Yes, these are yes by default. And later on, I'm going to talk about this flag here in more details. We'll just save those. And for a Multistep form, when we are designing from scratch, we always have a start step to define, which we already created, the step 01. The name of my step, I would normally put like OR Multistep Form Studio. Sometimes I put a number, sometimes I don't put a number, and as well the function of it. So the first one would be T's and C's, but depends really the project. So some projects we decide to only use the title or only use the number. It really depends. Another option here that I wanted to show is here in form definition. So this is where the configuration of the form is, and this is already one limitation from the studio. So we cannot select a tab there. But I want to select a tab, so I'm going to click select here, terms and conditions. This is, I can leave blank, and I want to associate with my portal user. And I already have a lookup to the contact record called applicant. Okay, so if I just clear cache, and well, I have here a list. I'm just going to point my create button. Let me just do this now, so we can just test it better. So in my list here, I should have a new page. So if I click create, select a web page, I have the application form studio page. And I'm going to select the same page for the edit. So I'm going to click here on edit. I'm going to do exactly the same. Don't worry about the JavaScript. I have a return here, and we're going to come back to it at a later stage. Okay, so clear cache. And once I refresh this page, I should see a create button. Okay, so the create button should bring me now to only one step, because that's all we have defined so far. Okay, so I'm gonna jump back here to my form step. I'm happy with what I have here. Now I need to create the other steps. So just gonna open on a new tab here, or I can just do directly, that doesn't matter. So I'm gonna say step 02. My step 02 will point also to the application. Now by default, it defines the next step as being the previous steps, which is where we came from, which makes zero sense. So this one here, it's now instead of being an issue with the design studio, it's an issue with the classic interface. So you have to always be mindful of that. So I got rid of that. I'm gonna say that the mode is edit. Select my form, and this time it's gonna be the application type. Because I have edit, we need to provide the source. And in this case here, because we just created the record, I'm going to say that the source is a result from a previous step. And this will be the step 01, which is the step responsible for creating the record. I don't need to associate with the current portal user, because this is only for the insert, and we already created the record. So I'm going to quickly create this step 03. So this time I want to point to my contact. So this is where I'm going to flip between tables. So I was pointing to the application, and now I'm going to point to the contact table. It's going to be an edit. And I have here a separate form for the contact details. This time the source, it's going to be the current portal user. So we don't even need to specify the ID. So that's a very easy option that we have. And that's good. I'm going to create this step 4. I'm just going to put here that this is a condition. So here within type of my step definition, I have a condition type. That's what I'm going to select. This points to the application. Again, next step here, I need to clean. And we're going to review the next step for all of them after I finish here defining the steps. And here I have the condition. Now, the condition that I want is it's going to be based on the application type. So I'm going to select all the application type ID equals. So I have 2 types of application types. I should have kept the GUID handy, but I can go here. So if I go on tables and come to my application type, I have, let me just open here on a new tab. I want the name and I want the GUID. So I have 2 application types. One is called conditional registration. The other one is called product registration. So if this is a conditional registration, I want it to follow one certain path. So what we have here is we have 2 links here, 2 lookups to the next step, let's say. One is if it fails, so we're going to have a step here. And the next step here is if it succeeds. So I'm going to create the step 05. I'm going to call it step 05A. This guy here, and application again. Form definition, edit. So I want the conditional step because that's in case we succeed results from the previous step, and this should be step 01. And if it fails, I want step 05, step 05B, which will point to product details. Same here. I'm probably going to review all of them now just in case I have, because I'm sure I have forgotten a few things. So I just clicked on the Multistep form, basically to start my view here from scratch. And I'm going to make sure that every step here has a nice flow. So I'm going to click on Start Step. And the next step here is empty, which I know it should be 02. Going to save. I click on step 02, and now I know it should be step 03. And just to make sure we have this set up here correctly, now step 03, I should go step 04. This is the contact, so we have here current portal user. That looks good. Here in the condition, we need step 05A in the scenario, and step, no, this should be step 05B. Now the step 05B is the product details. So I want that after the conditional step, it brings me to step, basically it merges the branch back to step 05B. And again, it really depends here. If sometimes if you have numbers, it's easier to follow. Sometimes if you have the title of the step, it makes it easier to follow. So it really depends on the scenario. So just to finish here, I'm going to add one more step, step 06, to represent the summary. Edit, and this will be my summary. So all the same here that I had. Just make sure this step 05 is pointing to step 06. All right. So just gonna clear the cache and refresh my page. Okay, I think I have pretty much all of them that I wanted. So I have the T's and C's, and then I didn't specify the name for the other ones. And one thing that as well that is interesting here is that by default, it will always retrieve the name that you have here. However, if I specify, for example, let me just check which one is this one is product details. So we have here in form options the progress indicator title. So I can put here, I'm going to call 05B, step 05B, product details. So once I do this, it will actually reflect there. So you may have, and what I normally would have is, I would have the title here, the name, as something more technical, with my prefix, my project prefix. And then I set the title, the same thing for the page. I set the title so it won't show the ugly name or the technical name. So I have here now step 5B, product details. Okay, terms and conditions. All right, so we have here the application type, which is a lookup. Now, one thing I forgot to mention here, but I had already set up table permissions just to make my life here easier in the demo, but that's something that you also need to set up in either in Portrait Studio or the management app, but you need to have the permissions. Okay, so one thing here that I always like to do is, this is a table, the application type, but representing this as a lookup, it's not always the best user experience. I think it's nice if you have a large set of records and you really need to search and add filter and or sorting and all of that. However, for 2 records, even for a list of 10 records, I don't think it makes a lot of sense, or it helps the user to keep that as a lookup. So I always like to apply a metadata. So I'm going to the step level. This is the application type. So I'm going to relate it and create a metadata. And again, this is another thing that you cannot do via Portrait Studio. But the idea of the metadata is that you apply certain customization, or you change the behavior of an attribute of that step. So I'm going to select application type. There are a few types here, subgrid and so on. I'm going to select this. And control style, I'm going to click render lookup as dropdown. I could as well change the label. So please select the application type, just as an option. And once I clear cache and refresh my page, so this is now rendered as a dropdown. Much easier, much simpler user experience here. Okay, so remember that we defined that one step here that will be the condition. Oh, sorry, I think that's actually step 4. So I'm going to select here conditional. Step 3 should bring me actually to my contact. So if I update here, IT consultant, this will update against the contact record and not against the application. And once I go to the next step, it's, oops, got an error here. So application type ID, unable to recognize. So there's something wrong with my condition. Let me check here. I didn't expect this. Apologies. See what I did wrong. So application type ID equals a GUID. I don't see what's wrong actually. Probably gonna need to go back here to my session. As there's a typo here. Oh, don't know here what I did wrong, but this should have worked just fine. I'm gonna try once again, just to be sure. This time I'm gonna select the product registration, and if this doesn't work, I have another form there that we can use. So step 3. Yeah, not sure what happened there, but I won't worry about this. Let me just go to my list. I'm just gonna change my page to this page here. Okay, so let me try now. So this form here, I had just changed a few other things. So this time here I have a documents. I changed the title for all of the items here, and let's see if this is going to work now. So conditional registration. I have contact details, probably wrong name here. And let me see if this is good. My God. I'll just quickly change the order of my steps here. I'll get rid of the. I feel like the issue is the contact step that is causing issues with the condition. So I'll just remove the contact if it lets me. I'll move from 2 instead of 3 is going to 4 condition. Let me see here. Just check if I did in the right. Yeah, so I actually moved back to my previous step. Okay, now it brought me to my condition step. I feel like there's something funny when I'm changing the table there is probably trying to pick back from the contact. I'll try to play around with that and see what was going on there. All right, so you see here that I have the conditional step, and once I jump forward, I have the product details. So let me just jump back here. If I change to product registration, it skips the conditional step and brings me back to the product details. A few things here I wanted to cover around conditions. First of all, and this one is probably more applicable if you have the progress bar, right? If you don't have the progress bar, don't worry about what I'm saying here. But if you have the progress bar, you need to keep in mind that the portal will always assume the happy path. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is my condition happy path is to go to the 5A. So before I get to the 5A, it's always going to display the 5A. Right, so this scenario here, I have only about 5 steps, so it's not a problem. But if I have a large branch, one branch showing certain details that doesn't make sense for a different branch, it will assume that the happy path, and it's going to show here the title of those steps, which you might want, or maybe it's something that you actually don't want. So a few things here to change this behavior is you can also change the type of the progress bar. So for example, if I go to my step and I change my type of the progress indicator to a progress bar. So I refresh this. And now I have basically a percentage. So if a user ends up skipping a group of steps, it's not as noticeable as if they had several steps. They're saying the title of the step. So that's just a way to set a different behavior here, so the user doesn't expect that they will go to one specific step, and in the end they aren't going because of the condition. The other trick, I'll just go back here to title. The other trick here that I do sometimes, let me go back to my condition, is basically do the opposite of my condition. Instead of saying application type equals this, I say application type is not this one here, and revert the steps. So the next step, if it fails, is actually the 5A, and this one here is the 5B. So I'm just reverting really things. It's just another way. One thing as well that people always ask on the forum is in terms of a case switch. So for example, if the application is 1, do this. If the application is B, do that. If the application is C, do that. We cannot achieve that in one single step, okay? Basically, when we're setting up a condition, one condition is one form step. So you would need one condition. So if it succeeds, go here. If it doesn't succeed, this step 5B, this one here is loading a form. However, it could be another condition. So you could say if application type equals A, and then within the 5B, it would be if application type equals C, then you'd have a happy path, and the non-happy path, you could do another condition. So that's how we would implement a case switch, but there is nothing in one single step here. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that one. The other thing I wanted to talk about was about the session management. And just to help with the session management, I'm actually going to keep this page open. And I'm going to my applications. And I might have to change this guy back here because I was playing here in the pages. So I'll just change this back, pointing to the studio page. Same for the create. Okay, so for now, in my form, Multistep form definition, I have the start new session on load equals yes, which means every time I start a new application, it's a new session, right? So if I click here on create, it's not persisting the session, and it's starting a new application from scratch. So I can select condition. So this is the application 38. And I can come here, application 38. That's fine. I'll just go back here. So you see that we have here the condition step. I just put a text here, and we are in the 5A. However, in my list, I have here the create, which we just did, and we have the edit. And in my case, the edit, I'm pointing to the same page. Okay, so by default, every list, let me just open here the list in a new tab. So by default, every list is passing the ID of the record. So when I say the ID is the GUID, the primary key of this application to this page. However, if I click here on edit and I'm selecting the 38, if I click on edit, it's actually bringing me to step 01. And even if I start here the application, you see that we are on 39, which sorry, I think I selected 38, and it's bringing me to the 39, which doesn't make much sense, right? But the reason for that is because every time I go to that page, every time I open the form, it's starting a new session. So that's the reason. And depending on your business scenario, it might make sense. You know, that might be exactly what you want. You don't want users to go back to that application. You want to force them to submit always. But depending on the scenario, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'll just flip this to no, just to show you guys the next behavior, right? So clear the cache again. And I'm going to open another tab, which going to get crazy here with so many tabs open. All right, so if I click on create, it's actually bringing me to the application number 39 that I was already on step 2. Okay, so basically it's persisting the session that I was last time and considering that as active. So I can't create a new application from start. And even if I go, for example, on the 38 and click on edit, this is also bringing me to the 39. So it's ignoring the 38, and it's assuming I always go to the last application, which again, it might make sense to a certain business scenario, but you know, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. And one thing that is very common in my scenarios is, so for example, users can create multiple applications and they can have multiple applications in draft, which means for example, I'm going to give an example. Let's say I'm creating applications on behalf of another person, on behalf of a student or whatever. So I might not have all the information to submit in one go. So I might need to start an application, maybe try to get documents offline or something. In the meantime, I have another application that I need to get going, and I need to have a way to also come back to where the application and continue it. There is a way to this, but it's a few that I use to achieve that. So let me I'll try to just applications here because I think I have spread it, but let's see. I'm going to create a new application. Not sure here what happened. Oh, cleared cache. And I'll make sure sorry, this should be yes. In the meantime, I'll be deleting more here. Clear the cache. Okay, so I have a cleaner state here. Okay, click on create. And I have here application 40 on step 2. So I'm going to open a new tab and start a new application. I'm going to, this is 41. And I should probably select conditional. And I'm going to say 0041. Just go back here just so it saves the data. Okay, so I have the application 41 on 5A and application application 40 on step 2. One tricky thing here that not sure if this is well documented, but it's the URL. Okay, so if I copy and paste the URL, just going to open this guy here so I can just remove the initial here. But you see here that we have two parameters. We have a step ID and we have a session ID. And the session ID is really the guy that I'm looking for. The step ID, it's actually not very relevant. So if I even delete the step ID, this is used in the backend, but it's not really important here. So let me get rid of it. And you see here that it still works fine. I'm still on the application 40, it's still on the right step. The application is correct. There's no issues. So that's more of an internal control for Microsoft. We don't need to worry about that one. However, this session ID is interesting. So if I copy this one, and I'm going to, I can get rid of this. I'm going to replace the session ID here. So you see here that I was in the 41, step 05, and now I'm in the step 02, application 40. So the session ID really controls which application you are. And this ID, it comes from a table called multi-step form sessions. Now I have a bunch here. It's probably a bit some rubbish data, but basically what this session has is some information about my step and where I am, and also my step history. So if I keep going back and forth and conditions and so on, this is going to track a JSON with basically all my history. You don't need to worry about the step, but basically what is interesting here is that, and you can see here that I am in the step 5A for this one, which I believe was the other application here. Was probably, yeah, it's the 41 application. So let me just go back here. So you see here that we have my internal ID for the application. And if I'm going to use the level up here, I hope you're familiar with this browser extension. If I look here at the record ID, which means the Multistep Form session ID, starts here BB1. Now, if I look here in my browser, I have here the exact step. Okay, so one trick here that I find, and now this is where my session from Tuesday starts joining here with today, is I like to populate that session against my application. So one thing I do, and I already created the field itself. So let me jump here to application, views. And I'm going to add this field here called form session ID, which is just a text field. It's not a GUID or any, it's going to be a GUID stored there, but technically it's just a text field. That's empty. And I'm going to show you here one trick to populate that field. Okay. There is one way. I'm not fully sure if that's supported or not. I'm trying to get confirmation from Microsoft, but there is one way that is via a Dataverse plugin. So basically, you trigger a plugin on the session creation, and as within the session we have details of which entity, what is the record. You can basically update that against the application record. The way I'm going to show here is slightly different, but also takes the same effect, which is I'm going to inject JavaScript to this page, and I already and I'm going to get the value from my URL and populate here. And for this, we're going to, so let me just delete this. I have the prompt here to save some time. So create a jQuery code that will retrieve the parameter called session ID from the URL and set the value in a form field called Oli form session ID. Okay, so let me see here if this, now this function, I would probably keep it outside, but it would probably work either way. Okay, but it all looks good to me. So let me throw this code into my, I'm coming here to custom JavaScript. Let me refresh this page. And it actually worked just fine. So in the all load of the step, it populated, it copied over this session ID into this field here, which would normally be hidden via JavaScript again, but I'm keeping it there just to see it. The one thing here about using JavaScript, this method that I did, this value would only be saved after I click next. The alternatives here would you either use the Dataverse plugin if it's supported, or an API, basically. So you retrieve this value and update the application with the value. So that's the other option. But this would probably work for most scenarios. So if I jump back here to my application, I was using I had opened the number 40. So I have now here a form session ID. And again, so for now, this edit here is the out of the box. So if I click on it, it's going to bring me to a new application, which is not what we want. I'm going to go back. What we want is to replace this form session ID. And now I go back to my session on Tuesday, and that's the exact JavaScript that we played around. So I just added a return here so it wouldn't execute, but I'm going to remove the return. And the other slight difference is that this ID was set up as session ID. So now once I refresh, it's going to hide that button and replace for the value here. So it's probably not working for the number 41 because it's undefined. You can see there in the URL. However, this one should work just fine. And there, sure, this is the application 40, which is just fine. So that's a very important one that I wanted to show. And I think there's one final element here that I was gonna show you, which is about the validators undefined, which is the page validators undefined. So I'm gonna try to go very quickly here on this one. So I'm gonna jump to my step of the product details, which is probably this one. And I want to add a metadata for the subgrid. There's plenty here that we can do in the metadata. So if you're not familiar with this, it's really a big one. So I'm gonna set up delete as well. And I already have a form here for the insert. Okay, so I have here the create option now for my product details. So one common requirement here that I have as well is that, you have one step with only a subgrid, and that subgrid needs to have at least one record, or sometimes it has to have 3 records, something like that. So I often have this type of validation. However, you can't make a subgrid mandatory, right? There's no option on the metadata or anywhere, so you can always just go to the next step, even leaving that blank. And that's a common requirement that I have. So I'm going to try to quickly, I don't think I have the prompt handy here, but let me see if I can do this on the go. So I'm gonna tell Copilot here, I have a subgrid on a HTML page called, this is the name of my subgrid. And I normally use these 2 classes as well, also represented by 2 classes. So this and this. Can you add a page validator object using jQuery? So that the subgrid has at least 1 record. Now I haven't tested this particular prompt, so let's see what happens here. Okay, didn't quite like, because it didn't use the page validators as I wanted. I might have to let me see here if I can. Can you add a page valid? Try here again. A validation for my subgrid using page validators object from .NET. Using jQuery only. It didn't use the exact logic that I wanted. But on Tuesday, I talked about how to add a validation on the portal in general, and even if you just look at the JavaScript validation from the portal, it talks about the page validators. So anyway, my idea here was not necessarily to show that validation, was more to show this object itself. So basically, and if you look at here at the documentation, there is this first line here which says, if page validators is undefined, return. So you will not be able to add the validators if you have this undefined. However, if I take a quick look here in my subgrid page, subgrid step, and I check the page validators, you see that page validators is not defined. So even if I added my function here to check the subgrid count, it's going to come as undefined. If I just go to the previous page just to show the same object, and I click here, page validators, you see that we actually have something, right? So the reason why this happens is because I have no field here specific to my main record type, which is the application. So the quickest, and I've seen sometimes people trying to create a whole new page validators object, which is probably something very difficult to do. But a quick way to achieve this is just if I go back to my form, and I promise this is the last thing here that I'm gonna do, guys. If I just go here to my product details, and I click, and I just select a field, which this field could be hidden via JavaScript in the form. Okay, clear the cache, and I'm going to refresh this product details page. Okay, so we have here the name field now, and if I just check again the page validators, you see that I do have the object here. So if I was trying to add a new page validators, it would let me this time. I'll try to get the code properly working here. I'm sure I have an example somewhere, and I'll post on my blog or something. So that was me, guys. Thank you very much. I know we're very close there to the hour, but yeah, no, thanks again to Victor to set this up. We have Ulrika next week. I think she's going to talk about styling the portal, which is a great topic, and she's very, very talented on that. So yeah, thanks again, Victor, for organizing this, and everyone for attending. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.